Summer is here, and that means lots of delicious pies. I'm Amanda Brown of Fabric Heart, and we're going to make a very fun pie carrier together today. For today's project, we have a great collection of OLFA tools, but the main ones we have here are the circle cutter, the Ergo magenta handle, and the AK1 art knife. If we have cutting tools like these, we're going to need some cutting mats. And I'm using two different ones today, and we'll get into the reasons behind that later. But I have the 24 by 36 inch gray double-sided mat, and then I have the 9 by 12 smaller yellow rotary mat. Also, a collection of OLFA's fantastic rulers. And then let's get into those materials. Fun fabrics first. I have two 19 inch by width of fabric pieces of quilting cotton, the strawberries and the gingham. And then I have quilt batting, a 19 inch square of quilt batting and a 19 inch square of heavyweight stabilizer. It's kind of foamy. You can get away with a lot of different materials here. You're just looking for something that is going to add structure and support to the bottom of this so that your pie feels supported. I'm also using 46 inches of 1 inch cotton webbing. From both of our quilting cottons, we are going to cut 19 inch squares. We're also going to cut the same from our quilt batting. And these are going to be the main structure of our pie carrier. Since I'm using a long ruler but not a wide ruler, I'm going to use the lines on my mat, my 19 inch line here, to cut my square big enough. I'm also going to take a second cut off the other side to make sure that my cuts are nice and true. I'm going to cut a square from my second fabric and also my quilt batting. I'm going to layer my two cotton fabric right sides facing, and then on top of that I will place my quilt batting. And then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew around all four sides, except for I'm going to leave a good chunk open to turn it inside out, or right side out if you will. I'm going to sew around the edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. It is quite a lot of layers here, so you might need to use a walking foot or whatever your machine comes with that's going to help feed all those layers through at the same time. Use your precision applique scissors here to trim down the corners to remove bulk so that when you turn it right side out, that the corners aren't really big bulky corners. Then turn your project right side out, taking time to make sure that all the seam allowances and the corners are pushed out so that you have a nice square piece in the end. Take some time to make sure that opening part is folded under and it looks like it's just part of the seam. And then we're going to top stitch around this with a 1/4 inch seam with a longer stitch and go all the way around the outside, and that's going to seal in that open part. With our leftover pieces of the quilted cotton, we're going to cut out some circles. So here is my OLFA rotary circle cutter. I can adjust the pivot point here, and I'm going to put it out to the max that I will go to make the biggest circle I can. I'm going to lift up that blade protector and then take the point protector off the point and store it on the end cap. And I don't necessarily always find the exact middle of my fabric here. I'm just testing to make sure that I clear on the two sides, so I'm trying to get as close as I can to the edge to not waste fabric. And I'm going to cut out this circle. Always put the covers back on, those pokey sharp parts, so that you don't cut yourself. And here's our first circle. We're going to repeat this with our other quilting cotton, and then with this heavyweight stabilizer that is kind of like a foam, but it cuts perfectly. We're going to cut this circle a 1/4 inch smaller on the circle cutter scale. So it was at 4.5 and now we're moving it into 4.25. And this is going to give us a circle that's going to fit inside of the two pieces of quilting cotton after we sew them together. Once again, I am not measuring and finding the center of this piece, but I am guessing and then trialing it to make sure that I've hit close enough to the center that I am going to get a full circle cut out of this piece. Layer the two quilting cotton circles right side together on top of each other, and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch around the outside, leaving about 3 inches open for turning. When sewing circles together or curves, you want to make sure that you can stop your piece or your sewing every once in a while and have your presser foot come up with your needle down. This allows you to release the tension on the fabric as you're sewing around. And also, I like to use a pivot point method where I'm kind of allowing the outside edge of the fabric to go under the foot easily, while I'm also slowing down the inside, and that's going to act as a pivot and make your sewing a lot easier. Turn this right side out, making sure to push out on your seam allowances. You might want to give this a little press, and that opening that you have, give it a little finger press to try to press it under so that the look of the piece looks like it isn't an opening at all. Fold over your heavyweight stabilizer and then carefully put it inside this and make sure that it lies nice and flat. Once you have that done, you're going to pin your seam allowances in place so it looks like there isn't an opening there, and we will secure that when we sew it into the square that we have created. I've marked the middle of my 46-inch strap so that I can make sure that I'm keeping that in the middle and I have equal fabric or equal webbing on either side for this handle. I'm placing it along that diagonal line from corner to corner, and I am making sure that I have enough handle that is going to extend almost to the middle of my square. There's going to be a circle on top of that, so if it doesn't go straight to the middle, you can see here it doesn't, that's fine. And I'm going to just pin those in place so that I can sew them down. I've clipped them on the corners here, but then I also have taken the time to pin them into the middle right along that diagonal line so I know that everything is exactly where I need it to go. And once I have that done, then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew it in place fairly close to the edge of the webbing, but I'm sewing from that middle portion out to the edge, leaving that top part of the handle, including that middle marked part, free. And that's going to be what holds everything together. I've switched over to walking foot here just because I'm dealing with bulky layers, and I am sewing this on about 1/8 of an inch from the edge of the strip, and I'm sewing the full length to the corner, across the top and across the bottom to make sure that it is fully secured. Find the center of your project and put your circle right in the middle there. You can measure it, you can find your diagonal, whatever method you use, put it nicely in the center, and now we're going to stitch it just like the strapping right into the middle close to the edge. Take care not to sew that strap down that is supposed to be the handle above. Now we're going to create some buttonholes. Buttonholes aren't very tricky. Look in your manual for your machine on how they make them. And you want to test them out first to make sure that they're going to be the right size. So here I've made one already and I've tested it to make sure that my handles fit, and they do. So now I can make them on my pie carrier. I'm going to use my smaller ruler and with the 45-degree angles on it. This is a really great tool to use when you need to find that 45 degrees. So I'm going to put that line right along the bottom edge of my pie carrier, and then I'm going to line it up in the corner, and that's going to give me a 45-degree line. And I'm going to use my marking tool. This is a hair marker, and I'm going to mark that 45-degree line so that I know exactly where to place my buttonhole. And I want to keep it as close to the corner as it can be. My sewing machine has this cool automatic buttonhole foot. I have a little bar that I pull down, and it tells my machine when to switch directions because I've set it to the right size buttonhole. I'm going to line it up on my 40-degree line that I have created, and then I'm going to keep it as close to the corner as I can, but not over the stitches in the corner. And then I'm going to let it do its thing. I'm going to move over to my yellow rotary mat, which is thicker and designed to be used with our art knives. The OLFA art knives cannot be used on the standard mat. It can be used on this yellow mat or even one of the folding mats. I'm going to carefully open this buttonhole up so it's ready to use. You could place a pin at the end so if you are worried about cutting too far, and that will stop it from cutting too far. You're going to create a buttonhole on both corners that don't have the cotton strap in it, and that is going to be how your pie gets held in place. And then you have this really cool carrier handle. And it is magical because once you put an empty pie plate in here, when you open it again, there is a completely fully baked, delicious pie in there. Just like that. Magic. And now you are ready to transport all your pies to every event that you have this summer. I hope you've enjoyed this project, and I hope your summer is filled with delicious pies.